The box still sat open on the floor, its flaps folded neatly like wings. I hadn't even unpacked the linens when the phone rang. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered without checking the name. I didn't need to. Only one person called like that. "Hey, Calvana, just a heads up. We'll be there in about 2 hours. There's 20 of us from my side. I told them you had the space. If you could get the rooms ready, that would be great. Oh, and food. Obviously, that was it." No pause. "No. Is this a good time?" "No congratulations on the new place." She made it sound like a delivery notification. I stayed silent for a beat, letting the words settle like dust. Then I said, "All right," because I've learned that's the best thing to say when someone is on asking for your input. Anyway, when the call ended, I stood there for a long moment, listening to the quiet creak of the new walls. I'd only moved in 3 days ago. My name was still on the paperwork in the folder on the counter. My name, no one else's, and yet somehow Kinley had already declared it a family lodge. Her family, to be exact. I didn't pace. I didn't cry. I just walked over to the kitchen drawer, pulled out a yellow notepad, and flipped it open to a fresh page. I wrote the date at the top, drew a line down the middle, on one side, food, towels, trash bags, sleeping arrangements. On the other, legal, enforcement, documents, copies. I underlined copies twice. There were 22 chairs in the garage that came with the house. I counted them last week with a kind of joy I hadn't felt in years. I'd imagined them full, yes, but with friends, laughter, potlucks, not this. They were coming whether I liked it or not. So I decided to like something else. Boundaries. I walked to the guest room and changed the sheets, humming softly, not from contentment, but calculation. By the time the second pillow was fluffed, I had already made my first call. For decades, I'd made do. Rooms that weren't mine. Kitchens I tiptoed in. After Roger passed, Camden had said, "Just until you find your footing." Mom, I believed him. I always did. But 6 years later, I was still in their basement, folding their laundry, packing school lunches I was never thanked for. They didn't charge rent. Kinley liked to point that out often, but they collected everything else. My time, my hands, my silence. That's why this cottage mattered. Not for the size or the lake view or the newly tiled bathroom. It was mine fully. I'd saved for it the way other women my age saved for surgeries or cruises. No loans, no co-signers, no shared title. But even before Kinley's call, I had known this wouldn't be simple. She had always treated my things like a shared resource. If I baked something, she brought it to her book club. If I bought new towels, she said, "Oh good, we needed more." If I sat down, she asked, "Could you grab me the remote?" The house was new, but the dynamic wasn't. So when she told me 20 people were coming, I didn't panic. I prepared. I stripped the spare beds and shook out the blankets. Kinley's youngest sister, Randa, had eczema. She'd complain if the sheets were scratchy. I wiped down the bathroom sink with vinegar. Someone would still leave toothpaste in it. I laid out folded towels. I knew half would vanish by the end of the trip. I didn't do it out of fear. I did it the way you might set the stage before the final act, meticulously, precisely, with a strange calm, because the second page of my yellow notepad didn't list towels or snacks. It listed line items, guest policy, local ordinance codes, occupancy caps. I'd spoken to a notary. I had the template ready. All it would take was one more step, and that step would arrive with the sound of gravel cracking beneath unfamiliar tires. The first van pulled up a little before noon. The second arrived 10 minutes later, then the sedan, followed by 3 people carrying folding chairs and an energy none of them had earned. I counted as they spilled out onto the gravel 22. Kinley had miscounted, or she hadn't cared. Your greetings were loud, uncoordinated. A few nodded in my direction. No hugs, no congratulations on the new home. One cousin waved vaguely while dragging in a rolling suitcase. Someone else opened the fridge without asking. They didn't come with casseroles or flowers. They came with Bluetooth speakers, travel mugs, tangled phone chargers, and questions that weren't really questions. What's the Wi-Fi password? You only have one bathroom downstairs. Don't tell me you don't have oat milk. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. They moved like they'd been here before, like this wasn't a guest visit, but a relocation. The eldest aunt took the primary bedroom without asking. Kinley's cousin dropped her bag on the twin bed I'd set up for Camden when he visited next month, and when I returned from putting their coats in the hall closet, 2 teenagers were already arguing about which bed had the better view. I went to the small den, the one with the pull-out couch and the lamp that flickered. I gathered my things from the larger guest room quietly. No one offered to help. No one asked if I was okay giving up my space. Kinley caught me carrying my folded clothes. She gave a sympathetic smile. The kind people wear when they've already made the decision for you. It's just 2 weeks, she said, her hand resting on my shoulder. Be flexible, I nodded. Flexibility, I've learned, is only admired when it benefits the person asking for it. I took the smallest room in the house without a word. Then I shut the door, not hard, but with purpose, and by nightfall I had finished revising the contract that no one knew was waiting. I placed the receipt gently on the dining table, right between a half-empty bottle of sriracha and someone's damp flip-flops. 26794. Just for transparency, I said, folding my hands. Kinley glanced at it, barely pausing between bites. We'll Venmo you later, she said with a laugh, nudging her cousin, who was already scrolling on his phone. No one asked what I had bought. No one offered to split it. I watched them pass plates like it was a potluck they hosted later that afternoon. Someone spilled grape soda all over the porch cushions. No one cleaned it. They just flipped the cushion over and walked away. That same evening, Kinley's brother tried to fix the slow, dripping bathroom faucet after I mentioned it. 10 minutes later, I heard metal snap, followed by him muttering something about cheap fixtures. The water shut-off valve was twisted out of place. The house smelled like takeout and spilled beer by the 3rd night. I heard music playing at midnight from 2 different rooms. My kitchen knives had been moved. The toilet paper holder was broken off the wall. I stopped asking. I just noted. I wiped down counters, swept up trail mix from the hallway carpet, replaced a cracked plate with one from the backup set I'd hidden in the top cupboard before they arrived. They brought their noise and their appetite, but what they really brought was entitlement. By day 5, I knew I wasn't waiting on a Venmo transfer. I wasn't waiting on respect either, so I stepped outside onto the porch that still smelled faintly of artificial grape and opened the folder I'd tucked beneath the garden gloves. My fingers didn't hesitate. The phone rang 3 times before she answered. Mrs. Marish, the voice said. You ready? Yes, I replied. I'm done hosting. She asked if I had the papers printed. I said yes. I already had them stacked on. The dining room buffet next to the folded receipt no one ever touched. By sunrise, I was already up. The house was quiet in that bloated way a place gets after being overfilled too many shoes by the door. Too many voices still hanging in the air from the night before. I taped 2 notices on the front entry, on the private property, short-term lodging agreement required for all guests. Then I walked to the dining table, cleared away empty coffee cups and someone's half-finished cereal, and set out 22 neatly printed copies. Each document listed the same 3 items, $140 per person per night. All damages billed separately. Full deposit required in advance. I placed a pen beside each stack. When Kinley came downstairs, she was in a hoodie that didn't belong to her. She glanced at the notices, then at the table. What is this? She asked, blinking sleep out of her voice. A lodging agreement, I said. Her laugh was short, clipped. Okay, funny. She picked up a page, skimmed it, and looked back at me. You're serious? I didn't respond. I just walked to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped aside. He pulled up right on time. Deputy Clem, punctual as always. We'd spoken twice this week, once about the noise complaints, once about occupancy limits for a residential zone. He stepped in, nodded at me, and looked around. Morning, he said. This the group. Kinley's face went pale. You called the police on your own family? I corrected her gently. No, I called the county office. This is enforcement. Camden appeared in the hallway, rubbing his eyes. He opened his mouth, but didn't speak. I could see the weight of it land on him. The contracts, the printed receipts, the timeline that proved this wasn't sudden. Deputy Clem cleared his throat. Everyone here will need to sign the agreement or vacate by this evening. Kinley dropped the paper like it burned. You're unbelievable. I folded my hands. You're welcome to stay, Kinley. But not for free. Not anymore. Kinley's voice cracked on the second syllable. You're not actually enforcing this. Are you? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even blink. I am, I said, handing Deputy Clim the first folder. Everything's here. Recorded call, time-stamped message, occupancy caps, neighborhood policy. I filled out my side of each agreement. Camden stepped forward, arms crossed, trying to play the middle like he always did. Mom, come on. This is unnecessary. They're just staying a little while. Deputy Clem flipped through the pages, nodding slowly. Actually, he said, it's perfectly lawful, and you were informed verbally and in writing. She gave notice. These aren't guests. They're occupants without permission. Kinley's cousin muttered something about insane old women. Someone in the back scoffed, but the Aunt Gwen, I think she was the one who snapped. You think you can charge us like some damn Airbnb? She shouted. Your family. I turned to face her. No, you're not. You're Kinley's family. You've never sent me a birthday card, never invited me to anything, and I've spent the last 5 days cleaning up your mess. Camden's face flushed with color. I watched him chew his cheek the way he always did when he knew he couldn't fix something. I handed Clem a second stack copies of text messages, printouts of the email I'd sent 2 nights ago that no one had opened, all of it organized, numbered, flagged. Kinley looked at me like she didn't recognize me. She really recorded the call. She said to no one in particular. Yes, I answered plainly. I did. Silence settled like dust. No one was laughing anymore. No one asked where the Wi-Fi was. No one assumed I'd be cooking dinner. I walked to the side table, unlocked the drawer, and pulled out the deposit forms. Clem looked over at me. Shall I start collecting signatures? I didn't smile, but I did nod. And when I turned to grab a fresh pen, I heard the sound of someone packing upstairs by sunset. The driveway was a shuffle of dragging wheels, slammed trunks, and low, bitter voices. The 2 vans were packed again, pillows stuffed into back windows, folding chairs crammed between duffel bags. Someone knocked over my flower pots on the way out. No apology, just the sound of feet moving faster. One of the younger cousins threw their arm out the window as they pulled away, shouting, "You'll die alone! I didn't flinch. I didn't blink." I stood at the gate, holding the clipboard. It was heavier than it looked, not from paper, but from the weight of finally choosing myself. Camden walked to the car with arms crossed. She didn't look at me until she reached the sidewalk. You made this hostile, she said, the words landing like a final shot. I looked at her and said calmly, No, I just made it clear. Camden didn't meet my eyes. He got in the car, closed the door, and stared straight ahead. I stood there until both vans and the sedan had disappeared around the curve of the street. The wind picked up just enough to lift the edge of the notice still taped to the porch. I turned back toward the house, opened the door, stepped inside. No voices, no footsteps overhead, no music leaking through the walls. Silence. I set the clipboard down on the kitchen counter, wiped the dust ring where someone had left a cup of soda, took the trash out, lit a small candle I'd been saving for after the chaos. The flicker of the flame cast soft shadows across the tile. For the first time in over a week, I sat down at the dining table not to clean, not to tally receipts, not to write warnings or notes, just to sit. And the quiet wasn't empty. It was full of everything they didn't take with them. Dignity, peace, and space that was finally mine again. I took one long breath, and then I reached for the envelope Camden had left behind on the side table. The envelope was unsealed. The handwriting familiar, tight, careful strokes, like he used in school when he didn't want the teacher to mark him down for smudging. I hope one day you see how cold this was. It read. That was all. No signature. Just that line, sitting there like it had the final word. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble or reread it, looking for softness between the syllables. I folded it once, then again, and slid it into the fireplace. The flame caught quick. Paper curls like it wants to be forgiven. I didn't grant it that. I walked through the house slowly after that. Kinley had left towels crumpled on the floor. Someone's makeup bag was still in the guest bath, tipped sideways. Powder dust coating the sink. The beds were unmade, sheets halfway off the corners, a slice of pizza crust abandoned on a windowsill like an afterthought. I didn't pick up a thing. Instead, I made one more call. By noon the next day, a cleaning service arrived. 2 women, kind and efficient. I made them tea and left them to it. I didn't scrub away the mess they left. I documented it. Took photos, marked damages, logged the hours. Then I sent Kinley an invoice. Attached was a clear copy of the short-term rental agreement. Her name signed at the bottom, bold, impatient strokes. I recognized even now. The email was titled, "Final statement for your stay." No emotions, no guilt, just facts and figures. Just what she'd ignored when she assumed the rules didn't apply to her. This wasn't punishment. It was math. It was boundaries tallied and delivered. I didn't wait for a reply. I closed my laptop, poured myself a cup of strong coffee, and sat by the window overlooking the gravel path. The sky was pale, the kind of blue that feels like a new page. And when I opened my drawer to file the receipt, I noticed the untouched stack of welcome cards I'd bought before they arrived. Still wrapped, still waiting, still mine. A week passed, just like that. No messages, no sudden knock at the door, no last-minute arrivals with coolers and duffel bags. I spent the first morning replanting the front garden. The soil was dry where the folding chairs had sunk in. I pulled the weeds, trimmed the lavender, and reset the stepping stones that had been kicked out of place. It felt good, quiet, steady work. No one rushing me, no one asking where the extension cord was or if I had another air mattress. I made tea in the kitchen just before noon, not for guests, not for anyone but me. I used the good cup, the one with the small crack. Back. I always worried someone else would break. A neighbor I hadn't met yet waved from the sidewalk. Another one stopped by with muffins, said she noticed I'd finally moved in. She didn't ask questions. She just smiled, handed over the tin, and said, "Welcome inside." The silence wasn't lonely. It was restorative. The kind that fills your chest slowly and lets your shoulders fall an inch lower. No loud voices bouncing down the hall. No music thumping through the ceiling. No one asking if I had gluten-free bread or a charger for their third phone. The laundry basket was empty. The sink was clean. I watered the plants, straightened the chairs, and opened all the windows just because I could. No one asked me to change the thermostat. No one told me the meal plan should be more balanced. No one told me I was being rigid for expecting a little respect in my own home. The house didn't feel big. It felt just right. There were no calls from Camden, no texts from Kinley, but I didn't feel erased. I felt unburdened. Sometimes choosing peace doesn't come with applause. It comes with stillness. I sat at the edge of the garden in the late afternoon, watching a squirrel try to outrun its own shadow. And when I looked up at the wind chimes I'd finally hung, I noticed something I hadn't seen in years. They were moving only when the wind allowed. Kinley called again 2 nights ago, then twice more yesterday. No voicemail. Just missed calls and a string of texts, some polite, some sharp, one that simply said, "We need to talk." Camden followed with a message of his own. "Can we clear the air? It's been long enough." I didn't answer, not out of spite, not because I was angry, because I was finished. This house was never meant to be a revolving door or a doormat. It wasn't built to carry the weight of everyone else's expectations. It was mine, still is, and now it feels like it. The locks were changed. The porch sign that used to say, "Welcome now," reads, "By appointment only." Not out of cruelty, but clarity. I kept the guest room tidy, but I no longer pretend it's available. I cook for one. I grocery shop without a list of other people's preferences. My days are quiet and my nights are mine. I spoke to my lawyer 2 days after the last car pulled away. We updated the deed, not the ownership, but the clause. One line. Plain and binding inheritance is contingent upon demonstrated respect. It's not vengeance, it's structure. It's a map for those who thought my silence meant weakness. Kinley will likely call again. Camden too. They won't understand. Not right away. Because when people are used to taking, they mistake boundaries for betrayal. But this was never a feud. I'm not fighting. I'm preserving. The house is still filled, with light in the mornings. The plants have started to bloom again. And the wind chimes sing when they want to, not when someone forces them. Respect doesn't require permission to exist. It just stops waiting for approval. And as I closed the folder on the final set of notarized pages, I felt no weight, just certainty. I placed it in the drawer beside the key box, locked it, and turned back toward the